They're making a lot of noise at the Tiffany apartments these days. Just last night, a group of tenants got together to form a tenants organization. The reason? To decide what to do about the building's air conditioning, or lack of it.
About starting a tenants association so we can get together and we can have some people to discuss these problems we have, our joint problems with management.
The tenants here say that if you count the number of days the air conditioning has worked this summer, you won't even come close to running out of fingers. All of this in a high-rent, theoretically exclusive apartment complex. Well, at least one of the tenants is fighting back. Kathy Morgan has installed her own air conditioner in her apartment. Even so, she doesn't feel she should have to go to this much trouble just to stay cool.
You know, like they'll get it fixed 2 days, and then it might go off 4 or 5. And it has been mostly off. That's the reason I put in the unit, because I can't stand the heat.
This is the problem, a 15-year-old air conditioning system which has definitely seen better days. It has broken down repeatedly over the last few years. Tenants say the treatment should be obvious.
And the management has spent money and time, and the stuff still doesn't work.
Why don't they buy a new one?
Well, now that's something else. That's the question.
No one listens.
Johnstown Properties, which owns the Tiffany, isn't as wild about that suggestion as the tenants are. Executive Property Manager Gene Painter says a new air conditioning system would cost $100,000. They've only spent $34,000 on repairs to the old system so far, and they think they'll have the problem licked soon.
We began working on the unit January 9th and have continued to work on it each month, each week, up to this time. We're getting very, very close at this point. There are a couple of new pumps that we're going to be putting on this weekend, which we believe will correct the problem.
It's been a few years since Vernon Keyes bought this rolling hotel, but he's had a lot of enjoyment out of it. On the road, items like the stove run on propane gas. Well, Mr. Keyes, like anyone else, keeps his eyes out for a bargain. So when he saw this ad in the Oklahoma City Times, it caught his eye. It said propane for $61.9 a gallon. If you know anything about propane, that's about 20 cents cheaper than normal. Almost as soon as he heard it, he was on the way over.
We drove in, the man says, "You want propane?" Sure. Took back, filled it up, went in the office. They filled out the ticket. Instead of 61.9, it was 80 cents per gallon. And I questioned him about it. He said that only applies to road use propane.
But the ad said 61.9, didn't it?
And even showed him a copy of the ad.
What'd he say?
Well, he says, "There's my prices. It's on the wall."
Propane gas distribution is getting to be a big business. Propane is cheaper and cleaner than most liquid fuels. Del City Propane is a brand new company, eager to attract customers. That's why they ran the ad in the first place. But were they deliberately trying to mislead the public? Kathy Guest says no, and she's trying to correct any wrong impressions.
We do have bulk prices of 61.9, and when we realized that they were thinking that this included anything, bottles or whatever. When we did see this, we called the newspapers right away and we told them the advertisement that they'd helped us work out seemed to be a little bit misleading, and we didn't want to be misleading anyone. All we were trying to do is to make people aware of the fact that we were here to service them.
Kathy Guest says Mr. Keyes can come in any time for a full refund.
So you have changed the ad.
Take, for example, the Green Oaks mobile home development in far south Logan County. The roads here are the absolute pits. This road is like the others nearby. They were installed by Oklahoma City developer Noble Hathaway. He owns most of the land around here, but for about a year now the roads have been awful, and residents like Irma Stallings are trying to cope as best they can.
Well, we go to our back garden and bring some dirt and we try to fill up the holes.
Does it work?
Sometimes, you know, but not just as long as it doesn't rain. When it rains, it don't work. Oh, it's hard to get in, hard to get out. You just dread having to go anywhere.
The question is, who is responsible for maintaining privately installed county roads? Mrs. Stallings only knows what she's heard.
We've called the county commission and the owner of the property we bought it from, and nobody seems to do anything about it.
Well, what does the owner tell you?
He's donated the streets to the county commission.
But Logan County tells a different story. County Commissioner John Gathers told us the county does not have responsibility for the road.
Just because someone says they want to donate a road to the county, does that mean that the county's going to accept it?
No, it does not. We have a set of standards in Logan County for roads and streets to be brought. If they're brought up to this standard, then we will accept these additions into the county. The county cannot spend money on streets in these developments that's not in the county system.
As we mentioned before, Noble Hathaway developed the area. He lives here in Oklahoma City. He wouldn't talk to us on camera, but he insisted privately that the roads are not his responsibility either. He built them, true, but his obligation ended when the roads were finished. You met Bob Leeper and his lawn almost a month ago. Bob was receiving bills for work he never ordered. The Green Lawn Lawn Service had offered to treat his lawn for $30. He said no, but he got a bill anyway. 2 of them, in fact. The second bill was the last straw.
Did you ever ask Green Lawn to come weed your lawn?
No, I never did ask them to come and weed the lawn or spray it.
But they did.
They sent me a bill.
What was your reaction when you got it?
Furious.
We dropped in on Green Lawn Lawn Service and found out they had been the victim of some over-anxious telephone solicitors turning in orders that shouldn't have been turned in. We were promised that Bob Leeper wouldn't have to worry about the problem again. It would all be taken care of. And that's the way it's worked out. Now, a month later, Mr. Leeper says he hasn't received any more bills from Green Lawn, and those over-eager telephone solicitors have all been fired. And you might remember the problem Jim Alexander was having. Jim runs the Budget Auto Service Shop next door to the Capitol Hills Hatchery. In this dumpster between them, the Capitol Hills Hatchery had been dumping large amounts of rotten eggs, chicken droppings, and some dead baby chicks. The smell was overpowering.
Oh, it just make me sick enough that I'd have to go home, lay down. I have vomited 2 or 3 times back there before I go home.
City County Health Department investigator Mike Rocky told us the Capitol Hills Hatchery had been told to double bag waste, move its location, and use a chemical disinfectant. Jake Engel, who runs the hatchery, told us he would comply, but he hasn't. Just today, we checked back at the hatchery and found single-bagged refuse in the same location, and Jim Armstrong says the smell is as bad as ever. We passed our findings on to the health department. They're planning another trip out to the Capitol Hills hatchery. Finally, 2 weeks ago today, we began a series of reports on keeping crime out of your life. Our first report showed how you can make your home more resistant to burglars. We showed you the need for double-cylinder deadbolt locks on doors. We showed you how to secure your windows by drilling a hole through the frame and inserting a pin to lock it shut. We showed you how a window-mounted air conditioner can be pushed into a house, allowing room for a burglar to enter. How much would you pay for this apartment? Kay Lewis is spending over $200 a month, and this is one apartment that isn't going to win any House Beautiful awards. 3 weeks ago, this section of ceiling was leaking. A repairman tore out the ceiling and said he'd be back in a day or 2 to fix it. Obviously, he hasn't. This isn't the only hole that wasn't part of the original interior design. Ever since she moved in 3 months ago, she's been looking at this cheery sight under her bathroom sink. It's never been fixed. Kay Lewis says enough is enough.
I have been after him from the day I moved in here to fix this apartment up. It was supposed to be fixed when I moved in. It was supposed to be sprayed. It was supposed to be up to date to move into, which it was not.
Well, what do they tell you when you ask them about it?
It'll be fixed.
But that was 4 months ago.
4 months ago.
But there's more than one tenant with a gripe at the Pine Creek Apartments. It seems like almost everyone has a story to tell.
They tell me, oh, we'll get to that. We'll get to it in a few days or tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes.
They just don't show up?
No, they just don't show up. And when they do come in, they'll look, well, I'll be right back. And that's all they say, and they don't come back.
One of the more unusual stories we heard came from the former apartment maintenance man. He quit.
I worked here a month and a half, and I had to quit because...
How come?
My conscience wouldn't let me keep the job. Mostly what was expected of us, what we were ordered to do was make ready, get apartments ready for new tenants.
What about people with problems?
We more or less ignored them.
Why?
I really couldn't say. It was just the offices. You know, the office made the decisions. And
we requested an interview with the management of the Pine Creek Apartments. We were turned down. But they were willing, off camera, to talk with us. They told me how about 2 months ago the former building managers had been kicked out, mostly for mismanaging the apartments. They concede that the apartments are not in good shape for the most part. They say, though, that they're spending a lot of money to get them fixed. Mary Wood is one of those people with the courage to admit it's time for a change and the willpower to do something about it. She's on a special diet for hypertension, and her doctors advised her to lose some weight. She contacted the Nutri-medic weight reduction clinics and gave them $115 as the beginning of a treatment that would cost around $450. But she had a bad reaction to a vitamin supplement that Nutri-medic gave her, and her doctors advised her to leave the program that she had just barely begun. She was told that getting her money back would be no problem. Well, it was a problem.
You contacted the Nutri-medic clinic and told them that your heart doctor told you not to go through the procedure?
Yes.
And what did they say?
They told me to get a letter stating that I could not go on the plan. So I contacted my doctor, and he wrote a letter, and when I got it, then I took it over to Nutri-medic.
When did they tell you you'd have your money back?
She told me that I would have the money within a week.
That was about a month and a half ago.
And I just don't think it's right.
Would you go back to Nutri-medic?
No.
We went to visit the Nutri-medic clinic. Our reception was friendly, considering we were able to discuss Mary Wood's refund, but only on one condition: we not record it. Meet Betty Bitzer. She's driving what you'd probably call an old bomb. No, she didn't buy this car used. This is her daughter's car. The used car that Betty Bitzer bought is sitting in her driveway. It's so broken down, it's unsafe to even drive. It looks great on the outside. 7 weeks ago when she bought it, that's what attracted Betty to it. But a lot can happen in 7 weeks, like a complete brake failure, misalignment of the front end, smoking engine, starting problems, and some other problems too. She bought the car at the used car lot of Steve Burke Chevrolet. They gave her a 30-day warranty on it, and they honored it. But now Betty Bitzer is on her own, and she doesn't think she should be.
Because I've worked hard for 5 years. I've worked 2 jobs just to pay my bills and buy a better car. And then I go ahead and I buy a car that I have been told is in good condition, and it falls apart on me, and I want my down payment back if I can.
Generally, when a person buys a used car, they don't get very good warranties.
That's Morris Bell with Legal Aid. He says there's really only one good way to tell the lemons from the pearls.
You should have a mechanic or someone who knows a lot about the mechanical aspects of a car to check it out. And if you have a mechanic check it out, he can determine whether there's potential for trouble in the near future. If the salesman refuses to allow you to inspect a car, if he refuses to do that, I would advise you not to buy that car. Then that may be an indication that there is something wrong with that car.
At Steve Burke Chevrolet, we talked with Warren Lentz. His lot is one of the relatively few used car dealerships in Oklahoma City that offers any kind of warranty. We asked if he would allow his cars to be checked out privately.
If a person came in and says, well, I like this car, I don't know that much about it, could I bring a mechanic down and have him look at it for me? Would that be all right with you?
You bet. We even let the people take it off the lot to the mechanics. If it's not a good car, I don't want to sell it to them anyway.
This is Jason. He's as busy as any 4-year-old has a right to be. On top of his activity list are climbing and exploring. Well, just imagine how interesting this missing sewer manhole cover is to someone like Jason. That's raw sewage down there. Jason's mother, Carol Yoakum, has pulled him off this rather dangerous play mountain more than once. She's trying to teach him to stay away from it. She's also trying to get the city to fix it.
I called the park department, the water department, police department, sewer department. Then I called you. The park wanted to know if it was on their property, and I told them I didn't know. It was just here, you know. It was over by the park. And she says, well, call the water department. So I did. And they said, call the sewer department. So I did. And they said they'd send somebody out. I said, you'll have them out today because somebody was going to get hurt. And she said, yeah. And they never showed up. I'm worried about kids falling in here and getting themselves killed.
Have you seen kids playing around up here?
Yep. After I got back from calling the other day, there was 2 little kids playing on top of it.
The responsibility to replace the manhole cover rests on the shoulders of the Water Department's Line Maintenance Division. They've got a big job. Line Maintenance is responsible for keeping up all of the well over 2,000 miles of sewer and water lines in Oklahoma City. Bill Ingram runs that department. He has more of a backlog of problems than he'd like to have, but his department says they get to them all. In fact, within 2 days of our conversation with Carol Yoakum, the missing manhole cover was back in place.
Well, after I called you, I think it was Friday morning, when I got back here about 4 o'clock, they had the drain fixed.
Well, you might think that a little thing like a sewer manhole cover being gone isn't much of a problem. But with little kids around in a park, it could be big trouble. Fortunately, this is one sewer manhole that isn't going to be a problem anymore. I'm Chris Houston, in your corner.
With us from that day
It all started as a funny idea with Jeff Walk. He'd seen this ad from a company called Facade for a new type of shirt design. It was nothing elaborate, but being a horse enthusiast, he thought it would be fun to own a couple of the shirts. At $35 a throw, they weren't cheap, but he ordered 2 anyway. With tax, it came to $74. He placed the order last April. This, by the way, is August.
The order blank says allow 4 to 6 weeks for delivery. How long has it been since you placed your order?
Well, it'll be 3 months.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it's about 2 to 3 times as long as they say to allow. We can't even get a hold of anyone to talk to. I still would like the shirts, to tell you the truth, but I would settle now for just having my money back. I feel I've given them a fair chance.
It's a common problem. Americans spend well over $1 billion every year on mail order products, and sometimes they run into problems. Most mail order problems can be solved by writing back to the company. Occasionally, you might have to find a phone number for them and give them a call. If you still get no results and you think you may be a victim of mail fraud, call your nearest post office and ask for a postal investigator. They'll take it from there. It will never happen to you, right? It's only something to read about, something to watch on the news. Well, of course, we know that fire can happen to any of us. But to apartment dwellers, the threat of a fire is even more frightening, because if you're up high, escaping from a fire could be almost as dangerous as staying in it. In the aftermath of the MGM Grand Fire, the Oklahoma City Council, like other city councils across the country, took action. Last January, they passed an ordinance. It said that any rental property larger than a duplex had to have smoke detectors. It was a simple ordinance, and apartment owners were given until mid-June to comply. But has there been compliance? As the fire department surveys the city, they think not. They suspect perhaps hundreds of apartment complexes still have no smoke detectors. Tragedies just waiting to happen. The Tiffany Apartments is one such complex. There are no smoke detectors here. Tenants are banding together to form a tenants organization to talk to management about smoke detectors and other problems as well. Of course, many apartment complexes are complying, and smoke detectors are being installed. They're being motivated by the obvious safety benefits, They are perhaps also motivated by the heavy fine that can come from non-compliance. Apartment buildings with no smoke detectors can be fined $35 per day per unit. That could get very expensive very quickly. It's a lot cheaper to just install the smoke detectors. There's something restful about all that grass nodding gently in the summer breeze, at least to look at it on television. If you actually had to live near this mess, you wouldn't be impressed at all. You couldn't drain a bathtub down this ditch the way it is now, but when you live near Council and North 5th, this is the ditch that means the difference between drainage and flooding. Since this ditch is obviously no good for drainage, it's filling in instead as a summer home for a couple of herds of gypsy mosquitoes. Neighbor Bill Sanders says it's awful.
Well, you can't stand out here at night. They get to moving. If anybody does any yard work in this area, you got to use a whole can of off or something like that to be able to stay out at night. If we can't get something done, that's why I've called you to get some support. I'm not getting it from the city, no action at all.
This is one of only a handful of city work crews available to clean city drainage ditches. Street Maintenance Director Fred Thompson says that it is absolutely impossible for the city to keep up with the problem, no matter how hard they work.
With the rain that we've had this year, the growth, especially in the unimproved areas, we've just had a tremendous battle, and we're way behind, and we've lost ground on it all summer long.
But Fred Thompson did promise me he'd check into the problem at Council and North 5th, and check into it he did. This is the way this drain is supposed to look.
Well, you were out yesterday to talk to my husband, and this morning at 8 o'clock, city trucks came out with a little digger on the front, and he dug all this stuff out, cut the weeds, hauled them off.
They do a good job?
Yes, they did.
But like it or not, that's what they've been putting up with at the Southern Oaks Apartments for most of the summer. Carol Eaton lives in one of the approximately 100 apartments with no cooling at all. She says they've had air conditioning maybe 4 days all summer.
I have called supervisors in Temple, Texas, and also Dayton, Ohio, and have not received a call back.
Management told us they were working to correct the problem as quickly as they could, but a month later the air conditioning is still off. Some people are going to stay with friends and relatives rather than put up with the heat. We've received several calls from the tenants of the Southern Oaks Apartments, and we want to repeat what the apartment management has told us, that tenants will be allowed to put window air conditioning units in their apartments, and management will be happy to pick up the increased electricity bill. That will help some. Then just last Monday, you met Betty Bitzer driving her daughter's car because hers was broken down. About 8 weeks ago, Betty bought a used car from Steve Burke Chevrolet. About 2 weeks ago, she found out the brakes were completely gone, and there were other problems with the car as well.
And then I go ahead and I buy a car that I have been told is in good condition, and it falls apart on me, and I want my down payment back if I can.
Generally, when a person buys a used,
we talked with legal aid attorney Morris Bell. He told us that a used car is sold usually as is, and if there is no warranty, or if the warranty has expired, then the buyer is on his own. But Betty Bitzer, it turns out, does have somewhere to turn. You're looking at $13,000 worth of brand new pickup. It belongs to Steve Faust. He uses it in his welding business. Now, you may have noticed there's no tailgate. We'll tell you why in a minute. It all started when Steve took his truck back to Southwest Ford for a little warranty work. He left it overnight.
My wife went and got it and drove it around to the front of the service department, and the tailgate was gone, and the driver's side door had a big scratch in it.
What was your reaction when you saw that?
I couldn't believe it. So I had to wait around for the service manager, talk to him about it. When I asked him what they was going to do about it, they said they weren't responsible for it, and I'd have to take it up with my insurance company.
In addition to no tailgate, Steve Faust also had an 8-inch scratch on his door. And Southwest Ford said since the vandalism occurred at night while the truck sat on the lot, that they weren't responsible.
Well, it's like any other private lot where somebody keeps their own personal car. It's really not up to us, but if we don't own the car, we're considered the secondary insured, and the individual that owns the car is the primary insured.
So it's their responsibility?
It's their insurance company's responsibility, that's correct.
Ted Gummerson says it's not any different from leaving your car in, say, a Safeway parking lot. But we also talked with attorney Ken Coe, and he said there's a lot of difference.
You don't deliver possession of that vehicle to Safeway. And in fact, in this case, possession of the vehicle was given over to Southwest Ford. And once that possession is delivered over, then this customer had no control over what happened to the vehicle. And the only person that could properly protect the vehicle was Southwest Ford. And the question is, then, did they properly protect the vehicle?
Mr. Gummerson says his lot is protected.
So anytime we don't have people, the dealership is not open, we do have an off-duty police officer here at all times.
Okay.
Would you mind if I asked you just if problems like this happen?
Margaret Timmons spends a lot of time looking after this house that she and her husband are renting in Norman. They used to live in their own mobile home, but they lost that a few months back. They couldn't make a couple of the payments. The Timmons own some land in Wyoming, and they're about to lose that too. The reason? An $800 income tax refund check from Uncle Sam. They've been waiting for it for nearly 5 months.
Well, they told us that the check would be in the mail the next day. And
when was this?
That was in May.
And what happened?
We still haven't received anything.
Now, did you call them back after that?
Yes, we've made calls every other week.
And they always tell you it's in the mail?
Yes.
And you've never gotten it?
No. We're about to lose our land in Shoshone, Wyoming, and we've had it pretty rough. It's a poor system, and I don't think they should do people that way.
Most people look at the IRS and give up before they start. It seems like just another of those big, impersonal government bureaucracies. Sometimes it lives up to that description, but not always. Even when it's not tax time, there's a staff of workers on duty at the Oklahoma City Tax Office that do nothing but, believe it or not, help people. Well, most of us don't even know they're there, and we ought to. They were interested in Margaret Timmons, and they promised to help.
It says right at the top, $300 a week. Local outlet of a large national manufacturing company is expanding in the Oklahoma City area. Need 10 people to start work immediately in our display and delivery. No experience necessary. Will receive full company-paid training. No selling. Well, Danny Burcham took this no-selling job with the Rexair company for display and delivery of the Rainbow Air Cleaner.
Basically, they told us that all we're going to be doing is demonstrating the machine, and delivering is going out and delivering the machine to the people and receiving the money. Okay. Well, when we get to the people and show them and do the demonstration, then we ask them, you wouldn't mind buying it, would you? And we have to do that 15 times. We ask them within a period. We are supposed to carry 15 pennies with us, and we're supposed to take one out of one pocket, put it in this hand, and put it in the other pocket. And if they ask us what we're doing, we say, well, our boss told us, if we do it 15 times, by that time you're going to ask us why we're doing it, and, you might buy it.
And that was after getting the potential customer's name by earlier going to their door and offering them a chance to win $250 in free groceries, then contacting them later about a demonstration of the air cleaner. Danny said he was fired from the job and never paid his $300 a week, advertised in the one ad. I went to visit Rexair company manager Ron Barker and asked him if the job advertised as no selling did indeed involve selling.
They're told that they get paid regardless if they sell anything or not, and if they sell something or if somebody wants to buy our products,
they can receive a bonus. If they don't want to sell it, they can call one of our salesmen and he'll go out and sell it for them. There's a distinction. He does not have to sell anything to get paid, what we guarantee here. Now, if he wants to make extra money and write up the contracts, if somebody wants it, then he can sell it.
So, despite the fact that demonstrators were sent out with a sales pitch, a payment plan, and a buyer's statement, they do not have to sell unless they want to earn more money. Remember, the one ad said no selling. Well, Barker said Danny was fired for being late for a meeting and having dirty demonstrator equipment, but after my initial contact with Rexair, Danny did receive some pay, a check for $100.